The galaxy believed Earth was silent. For centuries, humanity had stayed hidden, rebuilding after wars that had nearly destroyed them. The great alien empires looked at Earth as nothing more than a scarred world with no strength left. They told stories of humans as reckless fighters, dangerous in the past but broken now. To them, Earth was quiet, weak, and no longer a threat. But silence does not always mean weakness. Beneath the surface of Earth, far below ruined cities and abandoned battlefields, there were places no alien spy had ever seen. Hidden facilities, dark chambers, and endless tunnels stretched for miles. In those tunnels, machines slept. Their forms were strange, a fusion of steel and fire, waiting for the moment to wake. For generations, humans had worked in secret, repairing, designing, and planning. They had watched the stars with patient eyes. They had listened to the galaxy's whispers. And they had remembered. Humans never forgot the chains. Long ago, after their last great war, the galaxy had forced them into peace. Alien councils had demanded their weapons be destroyed. Fleets had been taken. Armies disbanded. Humanity had been told to bow, to accept weakness, to live only under the watchful eyes of greater powers. It was called peace, but to humans, it was a prison. They carried the memory of it in silence. Every generation told the next, one day, the chains would break. The galaxy laughed at the idea. To them, humans were scattered. Their colonies were small, their fleets non-existent. Alien empires fought each other for dominance, never fearing Earth. The universe forgot the sound of human war. But in the shadows of their silence, humanity built something new. Stories began to spread. Small, quiet stories told by traders and explorers. A colony ship gone missing near human space. A patrol fleet that never returned. The wreckage was never found, the signals never traced. Some said it was pirates, others said it was the void itself. Yet whispers grew stronger. And those who listened carefully noticed a pattern. Every disappearance happened near the borders of Earth. Still, the alien councils did not believe. They thought humans were too weak. They thought humanity had learned to obey. But among the stars, fear has a way of moving faster than truth. In dark halls and royal chambers, alien leaders remembered the old wars. They remembered how human soldiers had fought even when outnumbered. They remembered how human fleets had bled the galaxy dry before surrendering. And deep inside, they feared what silence could mean. On Earth, the silence was not peace. It was the silence before a storm. In a forgotten valley, a machine opened its eyes for the first time in centuries. The ground trembled as power flowed through its body. Sparks of light danced across its frame, and in its chest a red glow awakened. The valley echoed with the sound of steel grinding against steel, like a beast stretching after a long sleep. One by one, more machines stirred in their hidden tombs. Dust fell from their bodies as engines roared for the first time in generations. The sound traveled through the earth like thunder, unnoticed by the stars above, but felt by every human who had waited for this moment. The day had come. Humanity had kept its silence long enough. Children in cities looked to the sky, hearing faint echoes of rumbling deep below. Elders whispered prayers, knowing the chains were breaking. Soldiers who had trained in secret stood ready, their hands trembling not with fear, but with anticipation. Humanity had lived in shadow for too long, and now the light of their war machines was about to shine once more. Far above Earth, in the dark between stars, satellites carried coded signals. Hidden networks awoke. Messages spread to distant colonies, calling them back, uniting them under one banner again. For centuries, humans had appeared divided, weak, scattered. But that was only a mask. Behind the mask was something the galaxy had forgotten: human unity, sharpened by pain, forged by silence. The universe had believed humans were chained. But chains can rust. Chains can break. And when they do, what they hold back cannot be controlled. As night fell across Earth, the machines rose higher. Their eyes burned like fire against the darkness. One voice carried through hidden speakers, a voice that belonged not to a man or a machine, but to something greater, the will of humanity itself. It said only one thing, but it was enough to shake the stars: we are awake. The galaxy did not yet know. The alien empires still believed Earth was silent. But in that single night, the silence was broken. The chains were shattered. And in the deep, endless dark of the universe, something stirred. Something that made even the heavens tremble. Humanity had returned. The whispers began in the quiet corners of the galaxy. Traders who passed near human space spoke of strange lights in the void. Explorers told of shadows moving where no fleet should exist. Captains swore they had seen ships that vanished without a trace, as if swallowed by the stars themselves. At first, no one listened. The galaxy was full of lies, and rumors always traveled faster than truth. But these whispers were different. They carried fear. In the great halls of alien empires, leaders dismissed the stories. To them, humans were nothing but a forgotten race, chained by peace, stripped of power. They cannot fight, some said. They do not dare. Yet the disappearances grew harder to ignore. A mining colony vanished along a trade route. A patrol fleet of 20 ships never returned. Messages sent for help came too late, broken transmissions filled with static, cut short by silence. The galaxy began to wonder if the silence around Earth was not weakness, but something else. The Council of Atheris, one of the oldest alien powers, gathered in their shining capital. Tall, scaled diplomats stood in circles, their golden eyes glowing in fear. One of them spoke, his voice low and sharp. I remember the last human war. They fought until their skies burned. They fought when they had nothing left but stones. Do you not see the pattern? They are stirring again. Others argued, saying it was impossible. Yet none could explain the missing fleets. None could explain the fear that hung in the air. Across the stars, different empires began to share the same unease. The Joral Dominion, proud and cruel, ordered scouts to watch Earth. The Kalari, masters of trade, warned their merchants to avoid human borders. Even the proud tacticians, who once enslaved entire worlds, tightened their defenses. Old stories returned, spoken in shadows. Stories of human soldiers who never surrendered. Stories of fleets that fought until their last breath. Stories of eyes burning in the dark. On Earth itself, the silence was still unbroken, but the whispers carried weight. Humanity had not yet revealed its power, but small movements reached alien ears. A faint signal detected near a dead star. A shadow larger than any known ship crossing the void. A sudden spike in energy on the far side of the moon. Small pieces, scattered and incomplete, but enough to make the galaxy nervous. Among the stars, rumors became prophecy. Ancient texts from long-dead civilizations spoke of the day when mankind shall break its chains, and the heavens shall tremble. Scholars dismissed it for centuries as myth, a relic of old wars. Now those same words were spoken again, whispered in fear. Could it be that humans were destined to rise again? Was the silence nothing but preparation? In the empire of the thryn, a commander named Vorik stood at his station. He remembered fighting humans long ago. His scars still burned when he thought of those battles. He had seen human war firsthand. He had seen them fight with broken ships, seen them charge even when defeat was certain. He had believed the chains would hold them forever. But now, in the quiet of his war room, he felt something he had not felt in centuries. He felt the old fear. Reports began to arrive faster. Colonies destroyed without warning. Fleets erased without survivors. What terrified the galaxy most was not the attacks themselves but the silence that followed. No demands, no messages, no mercy. Whoever was striking from the shadows wanted nothing but destruction. And those who studied the patterns saw the truth. Every attack happened near the borders of Earth. In the capital of the Kalari, merchants shouted in panic. Trade routes were collapsing, profits vanishing. In the dominion of the Joral, soldiers whispered in their barracks, afraid of a war their leaders swore would never come. Even in distant empires untouched by the attacks, the whispers grew. The word human returned to their tongues, spoken with the same fear it carried long ago. Still, the galaxy tried to lie to itself. Leaders told their people it was pirates. They said the disappearances were accidents, storms, or void beasts. They said humanity was broken and weak. But deep inside, they did not believe their own words. Because silence is not peace. Silence is the sound before the storm. Back on Earth, the storm was already moving. Beneath cities, in the hidden chambers, more machines woke. Their eyes glowed in the dark, and their engines burned hotter than suns. Soldiers trained in silence, their minds sharp, their hearts prepared. Signals carried messages from world to world, uniting colonies that had once been divided. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not chained. Humanity was waiting. And the whispers continued to spread. On every world, in every empire, the question grew louder. What happens when the chains finally break? What happens when the silence ends? The galaxy could not answer. But in the depths of space, in the shadows beyond sight, humanity already knew. The chains were breaking. And soon, the universe would shudder. The galaxy waited in silence, watching the borders of human space with nervous eyes. Whispers had turned into fear, and fear had turned into sleepless nights for alien leaders. They told themselves that humans would not dare to break the chains, that the silence would last forever. But silence does not last forever. It breaks. And when it breaks, it shatters like glass. The first strike came without warning. Far beyond the edge of known space, an alien armada moved through the void. It belonged to the Joral Dominion, one of the proudest empires in the galaxy. Their fleets were vast, their soldiers cruel, their leaders arrogant. They believed no race could ever challenge them. Their commanders laughed at the rumors of humans rising again. To them, Earth was weak, broken, silent. They thought their fleet would remind humans of their place. But the Joral were wrong. The fleet drifted near a lonely star, its light dim and cold. Their ships spread across the system, scanning, searching. Then, without a sound, shadows appeared on their sensors. At first, they thought it was nothing but static, a glitch in the readings. But the shadows grew larger, darker, and closer. The commander ordered the fleet to raise shields, but it was already too late. From the darkness came the first human war machines. They did not announce themselves. They did not send warnings or demands. They came like ghosts, silent and merciless. Their hulls shimmered black, as if forged from the void itself. Their weapons burned brighter than suns. The first volley struck, and in an instant, half the Joral fleet was gone. Ships melted into fire and debris, swallowed by explosions that lit the system like day. The commander screamed orders, but his voice was drowned by the chaos. The Joral tried to fight back. They fired their cannons, launched their missiles, sent their drones. But it was useless. The human machines moved too fast, weaving through fire like shadows in a storm. Their weapons struck with perfect precision, cutting through shields as if they were nothing. Every shot was a kill. Every move was planned. The Joral had numbers, but numbers meant nothing. Survivors would later say it was not war. It was judgment. One by one, the Joral ships fell. Some tried to flee, but the machines were already waiting for them, blocking every path. Others tried to surrender, but there was no one to listen. Within minutes, an entire fleet that had once terrorized the galaxy was gone. Only wreckage remained, drifting through the void like broken bones. The silence returned, but it was no longer the silence of peace. It was the silence of fear. Across the galaxy, the news spread like fire. At first, the empires did not believe it. How could one fleet vanish so quickly? How could humans, the silent ones, strike with such power? But the truth could not be denied. Recordings escaped, carried by survivors in escape pods, their voices trembling. The images showed ships like shadows, weapons like storms, and the red glow of machines that looked alive. In the council chambers of the galaxy, panic took root. Some leaders demanded war, calling for fleets to crush humanity before it was too late. Others urged peace, saying perhaps humans could be reasoned with. But no one could agree, and all the while, the silence from Earth remained unbroken. Humanity said nothing. Humanity explained nothing. They had struck once, and that was enough to make the stars tremble. On distant worlds, ordinary people whispered in fear. Parents told their children stories of humans rising from the dark. Soldiers sharpened their blades, wondering if they would face the machines one day. Priests spoke of prophecies, saying the heavens were beginning to cry. And in the deepest corners of the galaxy, some began to ask a question no one wanted to answer. What if this was only the beginning? Back on Earth, the humans did not celebrate. There was no joy in the destruction of the Joral fleet. To them, it was not a victory. It was a message. A single word carved into the fabric of the universe: awake. The machines returned to their hidden chambers, silent once again. But every human knew this was only the first step. The chains were broken now. The silence was gone. And there was no turning back. The galaxy had seen the first strike. They had felt the power of mankind's return. And though they tried to deny it, deep inside they all knew the truth. The age of silence was over. The storm had begun. The galaxy trembled after the fall of the Joral fleet. Entire empires that once laughed at the idea of human strength now sat in silence, their leaders staring at the reports in disbelief. An armada of hundreds had been destroyed in minutes. The Joral dominion, feared across the stars, had been humiliated, broken not by endless war but by a single strike. Whispers became shouts. Questions filled the air. Who could stand against a power like this? Who could stop a storm once it had begun? But humanity remained silent. No demands, no explanations, no words of warning. Only the wreckage drifting in space carried their message. To the galaxy, this silence was more terrifying than any declaration. For when enemies speak, their intentions can be known. But when they remain silent, fear grows with every heartbeat. Still, the silence did not last long. On the third day after the Joral defeat, the message came. It was not sent to a single empire, but to every world in the galaxy at once. Across thousands of systems, screens flickered, signals broke, and one voice filled the stars. It was calm, steady, and filled with a weight that no alien could ignore. "We were silent because we were chained," the voice said. "We obeyed because we were forced. We lived under your watch, bound by laws that were never ours. You told us to forget war. You told us to kneel. And for centuries, we did. But the chains are broken. We are awake. And we will never kneel again." The message ended with no demands, no threats, no promises. Only silence followed. Yet those few words shook the galaxy harder than any fleet ever could. Entire empires panicked. Some rushed to strengthen their defenses, sending fleets to guard their borders. Others tried to reach Earth with messages of peace, hoping to calm the storm. But no reply came. Humanity had spoken once, and that was enough. In the Kalari capital, merchants screamed in fear. Without safe trade routes, their wealth was collapsing. In the halls of the Athras Council, scaled diplomats argued endlessly. Some demanded that all empires unite to crush humanity before it was too late. Others whispered that perhaps it was already too late, that war against such a force could only end in ruin. The proud Thryanen prepared for battle, gathering their fleets, unwilling to bow to humans they once considered weak. But even their commanders remembered the old wars, and fear lingered behind their pride. Everywhere, the galaxy shook. The silence had been broken not only by words but by the truth of what they had seen. Humanity was no longer bound. The chains that once forced them to obey were gone, and a free humanity was something no one knew how to face. On Earth, the people stood tall. For generations they had lived under the memory of defeat, taught to remain silent, told to hide their strength. Now they no longer had to pretend. Children who had grown up hearing whispers of old wars now cheered at the sight of awakening machines. Soldiers who had trained in secret raised their heads high, ready for the battles to come. And leaders who had planned in shadows now walked in the light, unafraid. Humanity was united, not by conquest or greed, but by the shared truth that they would never be chained again. Deep in hidden chambers, more machines rose. Their frames glowed like fire, their weapons humming with power older than some stars. They were not just tools of war, but symbols. Every time one opened its eyes, it was a reminder of the chains that had been broken. Every machine was a promise to the galaxy that mankind would never bow again. The message carried through every colony, every ship, every human soul. No longer would they live as prisoners of peace. No longer would they let others dictate their destiny. The age of silence was over, and the age of humanity had begun. In the far corners of the galaxy, alien priests began to whisper prophecies. Ancient texts spoke of the day when humanity would rise again, a day when even the heavens would tremble. They warned their people that this was not the beginning of war, but the beginning of change, a change no one could stop. And as fleets prepared for conflict, as leaders argued and soldiers trained, a shadow of fear spread across every star. Because deep down, they all knew the truth. The chains had not just broken for humanity. They had broken for the galaxy itself. The balance of power, held for centuries, was shattered. The universe would never be the same again. And so the whispers grew louder, carried on every world, spoken in every tongue. Humanity is free, and freedom is more dangerous than war. The galaxy had heard the message. Humanity had broken its chains, and nothing could silence them again. Yet as the words spread across the stars, something stranger began to happen. The heavens themselves seemed to react. Across distant systems, storms of energy erupted without warning. Stars pulsed with strange light, and comets changed their course as if pulled by unseen hands. Some called it coincidence. Others whispered that the universe was crying out, shaken by the rise of mankind. On the world of Keeler Prime, the skies turned red for 3 nights, filled with streaks of burning fire. The priests of the Kalari fell to their knees, reading ancient verses that spoke of mankind's return. They called it a sign, a warning that the stars themselves feared what was coming. On the ice world of Thryn, the northern lights twisted into the shape of chains breaking apart. Soldiers who saw it whispered to one another, afraid that even the heavens had chosen to speak. The alien leaders tried to calm their people. They told them it was natural, that storms and lights meant nothing. But the timing could not be ignored. Everywhere, the signs appeared only after humanity's first strike, only after their voice had carried across the stars. Fear grew not from human weapons but from the belief that the universe itself was taking their side. Scholars searched forgotten libraries for answers. In dusty ruins and ancient texts, they found fragments of prophecy. Words written long before humans had even reached the stars. The fragments spoke of a time when the chained ones shall rise, and the heavens shall tremble in their wake. For centuries, the texts had been dismissed as myth, a story told to frighten children. But now those words were alive again. In the dominion of Jorel, survivors of the destroyed fleet returned with broken minds. They spoke of ships like shadows and weapons like fire, but more than that, they spoke of the silence. It was not war, one survivor said. It was judgment. The heavens themselves cried with them. His words spread like wildfire, filling the hearts of common people with dread. The leaders tried to silence him, but it was too late. The idea had already taken root. Back on Earth, humanity saw the signs as well. Strange lights filled their skies, storms shook their oceans, and distant colonies reported cosmic events they could not explain. But to humans, these were not omens of fear. They were promises. For generations, they had carried the weight of defeat. Now the universe itself seemed to rise with them, as if acknowledging their freedom. Mothers told their children to remember the skies, because the heavens were bearing witness to the birth of a new age. The alien empires grew restless. Some saw the signs as warnings and prepared for war. Others began to falter, unsure if they should stand against a force that seemed blessed by the stars themselves. Even the proud Thryn, who swore never to bow, held private councils filled with unease. Their commanders remembered the old wars, but now they faced not only humanity's strength but also the fear of prophecy. The heavens cried louder with each passing day. In one system, a star collapsed into darkness, destroying an outpost that had long served as a watch over human space. In another, a storm of radiation swept across alien fleets, forcing them to retreat before they could even approach Earth. Again and again, strange events shielded humanity's borders, and whispers grew into a single terrifying belief: the universe itself was choosing a side. Priests declared that the age of mankind was not just war, but destiny. Ordinary citizens, living light years away from Earth, looked at the skies with dread. And in hidden corners, some began to pray not to their own gods, but to the humans who had risen from silence. But humanity did not ask for prayers. They did not claim to be chosen. They continued to move in silence, their machines awakening, their fleets gathering. They had no need to speak, because the heavens were already speaking for them. In the void between stars, the balance of power cracked. The galaxy had always believed in order, in chains that bound weaker races to stronger empires. But now the chains were breaking, and with them came chaos. Empires feared not only human fleets, but the collapse of the very order they had built. For if mankind could rise, what else could rise with them? The night skies of Earth glowed with storms of light, as if the heavens themselves were watching. Children looked up in awe, their faces lit by the fire of comets, while their parents whispered words their ancestors had once spoken. The heavens cry not in fear, but in warning. Humanity understood. The galaxy had forgotten them, but the universe had not. And so the whispers changed once again. No longer was the question, will humanity rise? The question became something far greater. If the heavens themselves trembled at the breaking of chains, what would the galaxy do when the storm of mankind finally reached them? The answer waited in silence. And the silence was almost over. The galaxy could no longer pretend that nothing had changed. The heavens had spoken, the chains were broken, and humanity had revealed its power with one devastating strike. Yet what came next was worse than fear. What came next was war. But this war was unlike any the galaxy had ever seen before, because it was not fought on borders or over single worlds. It spread beyond stars, reaching into the very heart of every empire. The first fleets moved quietly, slipping through the void like shadows. Alien empires sent armadas to block them, but the machines cut through defenses with terrifying precision. They did not fight like others. Where most empires relied on brute force and numbers, humanity's war machines fought with speed, strategy, and silence. They struck at weak points, vanished before reinforcements could arrive, and returned when their enemies felt safe. It was not war. It was a storm, and no wall could hold it back. In the dominion of Jorel, pride turned to panic as one world after another fell. Entire fleets sent to defend their colonies vanished, their wreckage left drifting cold and lifeless in the void. In the Kalari trade networks, merchants screamed as routes collapsed, cutting off supplies and wealth. The once powerful HFY found themselves retreating, their soldiers crushed by machines that never seemed to tire, never seemed to fear death. Across the stars, every empire was learning the same truth. Humans were not just fighting, they were dismantling the galaxy's balance piece by piece. The machines themselves became legends. Witnesses described them as living shadows with burning eyes, each one moving with the grace of predators. They struck without warning, tore through entire fleets, and disappeared without leaving a trail. Survivors swore they were not facing ships, but something alive, something that thought faster than any commander and struck harder than any weapon. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy faced an enemy it could not predict, an enemy that turned their own strength against them. But the galaxy's fear grew not only from the machines, but from the humans who guided them. Commanders who should have been cautious showed no hesitation. Soldiers who should have surrendered fought with an unbreakable will. Colonies that should have begged for peace instead stood as fortresses, daring their enemies to come closer. Humanity was not fighting for land or power. They were fighting for something greater. They were fighting for destiny. Prophecies returned with every strike. On alien worlds, priests cried that this was the age foretold, the day when mankind would rise and the heavens would weep. Even those who mocked the idea in the past now whispered the words in fear. Because it was not just war anymore. It was something deeper, something larger, as if the universe itself had given mankind a purpose. And the signs in the skies only grew stronger, storms of light and fire echoing every human victory. Still, there were those who tried to resist. Empires gathered massive fleets, uniting enemies who had fought each other for centuries. They swore they would crush the humans together. They sent armadas so large they could blot out stars. But even united, they could not match the storm. Humanity did not meet them head-on. Instead, they struck from angles no one expected, tearing apart command ships, scattering fleets, and vanishing before their enemies could respond. The larger the armada, the harder it fell. Every loss made the galaxy weaker, while humanity only grew stronger. On Earth, the people watched as news reached them from across the stars. They did not celebrate. They did not rejoice. They prepared. Factories worked without rest, building more machines. Colonies trained more soldiers, ready to join the fight. The war had left the borders of Earth long ago. Now it was reaching into the heart of the galaxy itself, and every human knew the truth. They could not stop now. The storm would not end until the galaxy understood that mankind was free. The alien leaders despaired. Some begged for peace, but peace was impossible, because humanity had no demands. Others swore to fight until the end, but even their bravest commanders knew the truth. This was not a war that could be won with numbers. This was not a storm that could be stopped with walls. Humanity had broken its chains, and nothing in the universe could bind them again. In the dark beyond stars, the machines gathered in silence. They did not cheer, they did not rest, they simply waited for the next strike. And among them, whispers spread even among humans themselves. The machines fought with such perfection, such deadly grace, that some began to wonder. Were they truly only weapons? Or had humanity created something more, something alive? The galaxy shuddered, and the heavens cried out once again. For the storm of mankind was no longer confined to Earth. It had spread beyond stars, and no one knew how far it would reach before the end. The galaxy burned with fear. Empires that once ruled without challenge now hid behind crumbling fleets. The storm of mankind had swept across worlds, shattered armadas, and broken chains that had held for centuries. But as the machines moved deeper into the stars, the truth began to show itself. The galaxy thought they were fighting ships. They thought they were fighting steel. But they were wrong. The war machines were not just weapons. They were more. And the revelation would change the universe forever. The first hints came from the survivors. Alien captains swore they saw human faces inside the machines. Not pilots sitting in cockpits, but faces woven into the very metal, eyes glowing red with fire. Others reported hearing voices across their comms, whispers that were not entirely human, not entirely mechanical. At first, these stories were dismissed as madness born from fear. But as more fleets fell, the stories became impossible to ignore. In the ruins of a destroyed Joral battleship, a fragment was found. It was a piece of a human war machine, torn and broken. When alien scientists studied it, they recoiled in horror. The metal was fused with flesh, the circuits woven with nerve and bone. The machines were not machines at all. They were something else, something alive. Humanity had not just built weapons. They had become them. The revelation spread like wildfire. The galaxy realized too late what had happened. When humanity had been forced into silence, when their chains had bound them, they had not wasted centuries building ordinary fleets. They had forged something new, a fusion of man and machine, a union of flesh and steel. Every war machine that struck from the shadows was not piloted. It was a human soul bound to a body of iron, unbreakable, immortal. Humanity had found a way to rise beyond flesh, beyond weakness, beyond fear. The heavens cried louder as this truth became known. Prophets declared it was destiny. Scholars called it madness. Soldiers called it terror. But all agreed on one thing: humanity was no longer just a race. They were something greater, something the galaxy had never seen before. And no one could undo what had been done. On Earth, the people did not hide this truth. They embraced it. The fusion of man and machine was not seen as horror but as freedom. No more chains of flesh. No more weakness of age. A soldier could become eternal, a spirit inside a body of fire. Generations who had lived in silence now lived forever as warriors, carrying the storm of mankind into every star. Children were told not bedtime stories but legends of those who had chosen to ascend, of those who had become the storm itself. Alien empires collapsed under the weight of this revelation. Some surrendered without a fight, unable to face an enemy that could never die. Others tried to resist, but resistance was meaningless against an army of immortals. Even the most powerful fleets crumbled. Even the bravest commanders trembled. For how do you fight an enemy that is not flesh, not machine, but both? In the void beyond stars, the storm grew larger. The machines gathered in silence, their burning eyes casting red light across empty systems. But within them beat human hearts, human minds, human will. They spoke not of conquest, but of freedom. And they carried one message with them: humanity will never be chained again. The galaxy had thought humans were silent because they were weak. They had thought the chains would hold forever. But now, standing before the storm of flesh and steel, they understood the truth. Humanity had not been silent out of fear. They had been silent because they were preparing. Every year of silence was a year of building. Every generation of silence was a generation of sacrifice. And now, that silence was gone forever. The final revelation was not just about machines. It was about destiny. Humanity had chosen to rise beyond limits, to break not only the chains of empires but the chains of mortality itself. The galaxy could only watch, helpless, as the storm spread further, knowing there was no way back. And as the last chain shattered, the universe trembled. The heavens themselves seemed to weep fire across the skies, their cries echoing through every star. For they understood, as the galaxy now understood, that the age of humanity had only begun.